Hello everyone, welcome to Technologies Discussion channel. Today, I'd like to continue the discussion on Arduino and Python programming. For this video, I'm going to show how can we actually use PyCharm to control motor, such as using this position rotation servo motor. Okay, the series that we are going to use is SG90, which is a very popular Arduino control position rotation servo motor. So this will be the objective of this video. How can we actually use PyCharm to control the position rotation servo motor through Arduino Uno board? There will be two series, okay, because if not, this video will be very long. So I have decided to split them into two series. So this will be the 9A series. Okay, so look up for my 9B series in order to fully understand on controlling this position rotation servo motor using PyCharm and also through the Arduino Uno board. This is my email. If you have any question regards on today's discussion, please drop me an email. Before I continue, I'd like to urge you guys to support this channel by pressing the like and also subscribe button. Please also turn on your notification bell in order to receive more information from this channel. Guys, feel free to give me some comment or some feedback so that the quality of this channel can be further improved. Once again, thank you so much for your strong support. Let's quickly understand all the different types of servo motor. Over here, we have this AC servo motor, okay, which looks something like this. In fact, they quite look alike, and also the DC servo motor. So as I mentioned earlier on, this AC and DC servo motor, they quite look alike. We also have this brushless DC servo motor, which is shown over here. The one that we are going to use for today will be on a position rotation servo motor. Okay, why this is very popular is because we can control which position they actually stop. So therefore, this position rotation servo motor, which is a more popular one, which I'm going to show it to you on the next page. We also have this continuous rotation servo motor over here. Okay, basically the key difference is basically all this rotation, they keep going on and on, which means that they can turn 360 degrees. And we also have this linear servo motor. Okay, the one that we are going to use, which is the SG90, which is shown over here. So this is one of the most popular position rotation servo motor. Okay, as he mentioned over here. Okay, so this is in fact the most common type of servo motor. Okay, so which is the position rotation servo motor. The output shaft rotate in about half of a circle or 180 degrees. Okay, which means that they are not capable to turn 360 degrees. They are only able to turn 180 degrees, which means that half of a circle. Okay, it has physical stop. Okay, so this physical stop is to prevent us to overturn it. So basically, if we overturn it, we have this physical stop that stop the mechanism. Okay, so therefore, this is actually used to protect the rotation sensor. These common servo motor are found in many radio control car, water, aircraft, toy, robots, and in fact, many applications here. Okay, let's quickly go through some of the technical specs. Okay, so it's all mentioned here, so I'm not going to read it one by one. Okay, but typically you can see that it's actually quite small. Okay, and it can be quite useful for some of the application. So this will be the task over here. So like what I mentioned, I have split this green line here. So this video 9A, I will be basically doing the task A, B, and C. And video 9B, I will doing the E, E, F, G. Okay, so firstly, let's focus on task 5A. So what I'm going to do is basically how to adjust the motor to stop at home position. Okay, so this is very important because home position is what we always call a reference position. So anything that we want to adjust basically reference to this home position. So after that, task number 5B, okay, I'm going to turn the motor one by one. Okay, over here, I actually have two motor. So what I want to do is basically I want to turn one motor. After it execute finish, the motor 2 will start to execute or by turning. So basically you can see over here, task 5B, we actually turn the motor one by one. As for 5C, basically the two motor will turn simultaneously, which means that they turn together. Basically, this will be summed up as the video on part 9A. As for part 9B, okay, what I'm going to do is basically under this 5D here. Okay, in fact, like I told you earlier on, this position ServoMotor, we can actually stop at various positions. So I'm going to demonstrate how can we stop at various positions. And also, maybe we can also control the numbers of turns that we want. Basically, these are all covered on step number 9, which I will further elaborate a little bit more. For E, F, and G, I think they are not so essential under this motor control. Okay, but I just want to, for example, when we actually have so-called ServoMotor, we definitely need to have some precaution like emergency stop. And basically, we can do an emergency remove, okay, which means that we can remove away this particular motor. And last but not least, we quit. Okay, so basically, these are the selection page here. So basically, based on the selection page, I will be able to choose what kind of task that I want to do. And based on that, basically, the execute the position according to what you actually want to set over here. So once we are ready, okay, let's quickly discuss on the circuit over here. So you can see over here, what we actually do is basically we provide a so-called 5V and a ground. So this 5V and a ground basically provide the power to turn on the 2 ServoMotor over here. And this output, okay, digital output, okay, will be linked up to the Arduino Uno board at pin 3 and 4. Okay, so basically this will be the configuration of the circuit layout. Okay, so with this, let's move on to the program in order to understand how can we actually use PyCharm to control the position ServoMotor. Let's move on to the programming side. Let's come to this PyCharm. Okay, so basically what we want to do is to use PyCharm to control this position ServoMotor. So by now, okay, I guess you know this first 3 lines, what they actually do. Basically, they import all the timing. Okay, they define all the digital input, all the digital output. In short, they basically load all the parameters based on this 3 lines. As for line number 4, they actually indicate that Arduino Uno board will be at COM7. Next, as I mentioned earlier on, we are going to have 2 motor, Motor 1 and Motor 2. So Motor 1 is configured as xMotor. As for Motor 2, I'm configured them as yMotor. So this Motor 1 or xMotor is basically controlled by pin number 3. As for the Motor 2 or yMotor, which is controlled by pin number 4. After this, you actually see this 3 line. So basically, the first one is basically to indicate the reference point or where is the home position for this position ServoMotor. Okay, so over here, I configure that 0 degree, okay, will be my home position, which is the reference point. So as for this SG90, okay, so I actually need to indicate the minimum angle and maximum angle. As for the SG90, the minimum angle will be 0 and the maximum that I can actually turn will be 180 degrees. So over here, as I told you that basically I just duplicate 2 sets as I have actually 2 motor to control. So next, okay, I actually done this control start. Okay, so this will be the main menu. Okay, so as I have shared with you under the task. Okay, so the first one is basically the homing, okay, which means that the motor return back to the home position. Okay, so task 2 will be motor turn 1 by 1. Okay, and then task number 3 will be motor turning simultaneously, which means that the 2 motor turn together. Okay, under this choice number 4, okay, I will do a little bit more experiment. Okay, so over here, for example, I can turn the motor simultaneously. I can also stop at various position, or maybe how many times that the motor want to turn. Basically, all can be done at this choice number 4, which I will use 9B, okay, which is on the next video to explain. So the rest will be on 9B, and the first 3 tasks will be on 9A, which is this video. Okay, so next is basically while true. Okay, so this is the choice. Basically, the first thing that I'm going to load all the menu, okay, all the choice menu here, but the menu title over here, and then all the possible choice over here. So this will be all loaded. So basically, based on your setting, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, different instruction set will be executed accordingly. For example, okay, so I'm going to demonstrate this, which is the choice number 1. Okay, which is the motor return back to the home or reference point. So when I actually put this choice number 1, you can see that my first motor, they will actually turn to the home position, which is 0 degree. Same for Y position. When I actually choose this position, choice number 1, it will turn to 0 degree. Okay, so this will be the first instruction. Okay, so I think to make things easy, okay, so let's run the program, so-called choice by choice. So this will be my choice number 1. Okay, so next, okay, always remember to set this to current file. So once I set this to current file, I actually can start to run the program. Okay, I run the program over here. So give it a few seconds, okay, to see if there's any fault on this program here. So no fault. So over here, okay, I just put no. Okay, you can see that these are all my choice. Okay, so as I told you earlier on, I'm going to do this home, okay, for the motor. Okay, but for this case here, because most of the time when we actually run the program, we actually want the motor to start at the home position. So therefore, even now, when I actually put this motor return at home position, okay, the motor will not be moving at all because they are already at the home position. So when I actually press this one here, you can see that the motor is not moving also. Okay, so let me choose this one as a choice. Okay, so let's move to the Arduino Uno board to take a look. Okay, so let's move on. After running the PyCharm, okay, you can see from here, the server motor is not moving at all because as I have mentioned earlier on, the server motor typically will position at the home position or the reference point. Okay, so I have indicate the color, black color here. Okay, so you can see that basically when they actually point upright this position, okay, which means that they are actually at the reference point of 0 degree. So as I mentioned earlier on, okay, because all the servo motor typically when we actually execute the program, we actually want it to return back to the home position. And because of this, when I actually run the program, okay, under choice number 1, okay, so you can see that the servo motor is not moving because they are already at the home position. Okay, so let's move on to choice number 2 in order to understand better. Okay, so this is a PyCharm view. Okay, so let me explain the source code for choice number 2. For choice number 2, we are going to turn the motor one by one. As I indicate earlier on, there are actually two motor 1 and motor 2. Basically, in this set of instruction, I actually turn motor 1 first, after that motor 2. After motor 2 finish, okay, again, I will turn motor 1 and then back to motor 2 again. So let me explain the source code over here to indicate to you what they are actually all about. Okay, so firstly, I actually turn the motor 1. I turn to the position of 180 degree. Okay, so they turn to 180 degree. Okay, so what does this one represent? This one actually represents the speed. Okay, so 1 is the slowest. So basically, the motor will turn to position of 180 degree using speed 1, okay, which is the slowest speed of this position servo motor. So once this task is done, okay, which means that motor 1 turn to 180 degree, motor 2 will start to turn from 0 to 180 degree. Again, they will be using speed number 1. Okay, so this is actually what happened. First, motor 1 turn to 180 degree using speed 1. After this program fully execute, okay, motor 2 will start to turn to 180 degree using speed number 1. So after all these two instruction is done, okay, this line, okay, will turn the first motor again. They will turn to 0 degree, back to the reference point 0 degree. Now, instead of speed 1, I actually use speed 10. Okay, so from here, you can see that they actually turn back much faster when they actually turn to 180 degree, which means that they return back to 0. They actually run in terms of turning. Okay, the speed will be much faster. So after they actually turn the motor 2 to 180 degree, they will actually turn this motor 1 back to 0 degree with a faster speed. So once this is fully executed, okay, so motor 2 will also turn back to 0, okay, using the speed 10. Okay, so this actually see how can we actually control the motor one by one. So when motor 1, okay, this instruction finish, then they will execute this instruction. After this instruction finish, then they will execute this instruction. And then this, once this is done, they will run the last instruction. So with this, you actually can control the motor one by one. So with this, let me run the program first. Remember, it's always important to select to current. So once I select to current, I can actually run. Okay, remember, I'm going to select choice 2. So let me run the test, make sure there is no error. Okay, so give me a few seconds. Okay, so you can see that there are no errors. So I put a no over here. So once again, you can see that all the selection all pop up. Okay, for this time round, okay, I'm going to execute instruction number 2, okay, which means that the motor turn one by one. So I actually press this 2 here. Then after that, we will go to the Arduino Uno board view. Let's take a look on choice number 2. When I actually choose this choice number 2, okay, the motor will start to turn one by one. As you can see that the first motor starts to turn to 180 degree. After you finish the task, motor 2 also start to turn to 180 degree. So when motor 2 finish the task, you can see that motor 1 turn back to 0 degree at a faster speed. Same after that, the motor 2 also will turn back to position 0. Again, is also at the faster speed. So over here, you can see that this set of instruction actually control the motor one by one. When they actually finish execute the job, they will go to the next line. They will compile this particular line, and once they finish this job, they will move on. So basically, when we actually want to control the motor one by one, we actually use this set of instruction. So next, let's move on to choice number 3 in order to understand better. Let us come back to this PyCharm view. Okay, earlier on, I have explained on choice number 2. So when we actually want to control the motor one by one, we actually write the instruction as you can see from here. Basically, this is xMotor turn 2. Basically, over here, you can see that the motor 1 will turn to 180 degree using speed number 1. So once they finish this particular sentences, then they will move on to the next line. Okay, so when they move to the next time, motor 2 will turn to 180 degree using speed number 1. Okay, again, like what I mentioned, when we actually use this turn 2, after they finish execute this instruction, then they will move on to the next line. So on the next line, basically, the motor 1 will return back to the 0 point with a faster speed, speed 10. So after they have complete this task, then they will move on to this motor 2 turn to 0 degree again with speed number 10. So over here, you can see that I would say that they are like very systematic. Once they finish this line, they will move on, they move on, and move on. Okay, but for choice number 3 is slightly different from choice number 2. For choice number 3, okay, you actually run this motor 1 and motor 2 simultaneously. Okay, you can see from here, okay, because they are not turn 2, and I actually had this xMotor track turn 2 or yMotor track turn 2, okay, which means that they are going to execute this program simultaneously. If you want to have some form of delay, again, you can put some delay in between them. So after they have finished this so-called xMotor, they will delay, okay, for whatever timing that you actually set, then they will run this motor 2. But for this particular instruction over here, since there is no delay here, they will run the motor 1 and motor 2 simultaneously. So what they actually do over here, these two motor 1 and motor 2, they will turn to 180 degrees together, and they were using this speed number 1, okay, which means that they turn very slowly to the position of 180 degree over here. So basically, this is what we are going to do, choice number 3. Okay, we are going to control the two motors simultaneously together. Okay, so let's move on to the Arduino Uno board to take a look. Before that, okay, let me press this run file first. So let's run this thing here. Give me a few seconds to show it to you there's no error. Okay, so there's no error. So over here, I'm not going to do any testing. So I put a no on the testing here. Okay, so over here, as I mentioned earlier on, I'm going to test the motor turning simultaneously, which is choice number 3. So I'm going to press this 3 here. Okay, so let's move on to the Arduino view in order to see how the motor turns. Let's take a look on the Arduino Uno board, okay, on the circuitry of the ServoMotor based on choice number 3. What will happen to the motor is basically under this choice number 3, I actually want to turn the motor simultaneously, which means that the two motor will turn to 180 degree using speed number 1. Okay, so let's take a look the effect when I actually execute this so-called choice number 3. Okay, you can see that the motor turns very slowly to 180 degree. Okay, after that it stopped because under this choice number 3, I actually want the motor to turn to 180 degree with the speed 1. So after that, basically they stop. Okay, so over here you can see that under this choice number 3, I can actually execute the two motors simultaneously. Okay, earlier on choice number 2, they take the instruction one line by one line. As for this step number 3, they actually execute them as a whole log over here. So over here, you can see that I successfully turned these two servo motor simultaneously to 180 degree using speed number 1. Okay, so let me move back to the so-called the discussion in order to fully understand the control of this servo motor. Let me do a quick conclusion based on this discussion over here. Okay, so earlier on, I have mentioned on choice number 1, choice number 2, and choice number 3. This part here, under the conclusion, I will explain the difference between choice 1, 2, and 3. When we activate this choice number 1, okay, which means that all the motor, I actually have two motor, they will all return back to the home position or the reference position. Okay, this reference position is very crucial for the motor because it indicates, okay, so-called with any form of turning or basically where they want to stop, they must have a reference. For example, 90 degree against the reference or 180 degree against the reference. I need to establish this reference before I can actually stir my motor. So over here, you can see that the instruction is basically return the motor 1 and return the motor 2 to the home position. And if you take a close look, you can see that this choice number 1, how you actually write, is basically the same as choice number 2, which means that motor 1 will return to the home position, successfully complete, then motor 2 will start to return back to the home position. This is what I have discussed, or even you have taken a look on the Arduino Uno board under this choice number 2, which means that this instruction actually executes step by step. This step here, I must finish before I move on to another step. For example, in this line here, the motor 1 will turn to 180 degree. Okay, so this first part here is basically which you want your so-called position servo motor 1 to stop. And the second term here, which control the speed. Okay, the bigger the number, the faster the speed. Okay, so over here, you can see that I want this motor to stop at 180 degree with speed number 1. Okay, so therefore, when I actually execute this line, the motor number 1 will turn to 180 degree with the speed number 1. Okay, remember, the next line will not execute until this line is fully done. So once my motor 1 actually fully turned to 180 degree, then this line will be activated. So once this line is activated, motor number 2 will also follow motor number 1, turn to 180 degree with speed number 1. Okay, so upon complete this instruction, again, the next line will be activated. Motor 1 will return back to the position 0, now with a faster speed. Okay, you can see that the speed now, instead of 1, they become 10, okay, which means that they actually turn to 0 at a faster speed. So upon finish execute this line, then the motor 2 again will follow the motor 1, return back to the reference point with the speed 10. So in this set of instruction over here, you can see that they are like very systematic. They finish execute this line, then they will move on to another line. If the motor is still turning, okay, this line will not be activated until the motor have fully complete the task, then it will pass on to the another line. Okay, so as for choice number 3 is totally different from choice number 2. Under this choice number 3, you can see that basically this thread is the newly addition word. You can see compare this choice 2 and choice 3. Okay, choice 3 has this thread, okay, which means that when they execute this program, okay, they don't wait for the motor 1 to complete. Both motor actually execute at the same time. Motor 1 and motor 2, they will turn to 180 degree with speed number 1. They will do it together simultaneously. Okay, so over here, if you need to control your motor, to turn them simultaneously, you need to add in this additional, which is called thread turn tool, so that the two motor will move instantly. Okay, they don't wait for each other. For choice number 2, okay, they will wait step by step before they execute another step. So with this, I hope you are clear how can we actually use this PyCharm to control this partition server motor. Okay, so with this, I'd like to end today's discussion. Please help to like and subscribe. Once again, sincere thanks for your strong support. Thank you so much. See you guys soon.